will play a small video about some stuff in clinical trial. And from the video, you can find the very special characteristic of clinical trial. So not the issue about data analysis, not just the issue about you collect the information, and not just treat the patient. In fact, in a formal clinical trial, we should have more issues to consider, okay? So let me find the video. Is it okay? Can you watch the video?
We cannot listen loudly.
Oh, okay. Let me check the voice. Let me check the voice. Okay.
While there are many different types of clinical trials, the following program focuses specifically on making decisions relating to the use of new drugs for cancer treatment. Patients and healthcare providers offer comments and suggestions in their own words to help patients weigh the benefits and disadvantages of clinical trial participation. They explain what a clinical trial is, what the different phases of clinical trials are, how risks to the patients are minimized, and that either choice, to participate or not to participate, is okay. The program also provides strategies to help patients make a decision that is compatible with their beliefs and values.
In the future, they can see how things will work out for me, and they can find something that's even a little better. And then for me going through this, whenever it does stop working, that better will be for me. You see what I'm saying? So I'm not only helping others, but I'm helping myself.
I hope that it will be useful to other people. I hope it will be useful in designing other drugs to fight this disease and to fight other kinds of cancer.
The goal of a clinical trial is to test potentially a new medicine or a new treatment, and it's not known at the outset of the trial whether that treatment is necessarily going to be better. Drugs are not the only thing that are tested in clinical trials. There are many other things that clinical trials are used for. For instance, a new surgical technique, or a new surgical device, new ways of giving radiation treatment, new ways of assessing quality of life.
It has to be based on a rationale that seems to make sense to everybody based on what we know. In some way it's been tested before we even get to a patient that looks at its ability to fight cancer, causing tumors to shrink in animals. It may be tested using human cells to see whether it might be effective in killing off cancer cells. But all of that, which may provide tremendous promise, then needs to get tested in real life people to see if this is really effective.
reason clinical trials are important is they are the way that we move forward. So the reason that treatments today are better than they were 20 years ago, for example, is because we've been doing clinical trials.
Just in the same way as the medicines that we know work came out of research and clinical trials, the hope is that similarly you're going to benefit people who come after you.
By being in a course of medication, I was standing on the shoulders of people who had gone before me. They had been in trials, and let's hope enough of them did well so that the medication I was on now was a result of that.
We're making better efforts to make sure that we address specific aspects of the biology of cancer that may apply to a minority group or to an older patient population or to men or to women. It might be clear to all the doctors who together are putting the clinical trials together that in this particular case we really need to know about how this particular drug works in elderly women or how this particular drug works in African American men with prostate cancer.
The death rate that occurs in patients, African American males with prostate cancer, is very different than the death rate that occurs in white males. One of the areas that researchers are trying to understand is why the figures are so very different. I have a father and 4 uncles who were diagnosed with prostate cancer. And so to think about them finding a cure or being able to diagnose that a whole lot sooner in life is something that is in fact very important to me and hits home because of having 2 sons in my family.
Every clinical trial or every investigational trial goes through several steps in a process, and each step has different questions that are being asked.
In a phase 1 trial, the primary objective is to really find the maximum dose of a drug to be given with side effects that are acceptable. In a phase 1 trial, the secondary objective is to figure out how well a patient is responding to the therapies.
Phase 1 is often kept in certain settings for patients in whom no other treatment options are readily available.
I had gone through a whole series of operations, conventional chemotherapy. I was at the end of my rope. And when I got involved in the dosage trial, it was because I had no other options. Really, there were effectively none. Given the kind of cancer that I had, this was what there was. What you're really allowing your doctors to do is to use the information that they collect in the course of your trials to advance medical science and to help other people as well. I'd like very much for this drug to keep working for me. But if it doesn't, I do hope that what my doctors and what the researchers learn from the information that they collect as I go through these trials, I hope that it will be useful to other people. I hope it will be useful in designing other drugs to fight this disease and to fight other kinds of cancer.
Look at the choices and decide how is it going to affect you. What is your quality of life with the time that you have left going to be? And for us, it was very important. When I was on phase 1, one of my very best friends was also on it. She was a physician, and she died. But her husband and I and my wife are still friends, and her children, we see them frequently. And every time he sees me, he said, I hope that her particular course of treatment helped you live, and I hope yours helps other people live. And that's the way my wife and I and the friends that I've surrounded myself with look at that. That's the way we view it. We hope that it helps.
In phase 2, the primary goal is we want to show this drug is effective against a patient's particular cancer.
We thought of the benefits both to myself and to others who might benefit from such a study. And I'll have to admit there probably were some selfish motives in getting medication that could help me as far as treatment of my disease is concerned.
If they do get a benefit, it's terrific. A significant proportion of the patients actually do have other treatment options we can then move to.
We've figured out the dose to give a patient in a phase 1 study. In a phase 2 study, we figured out if that particular drug works for that tumor type. And in a phase 3 study, we're trying to assess whether or not the new drug works better than what we're currently using.
We're comparing a treatment that is already being given, that is considered to be proven, to a newer treatment. We always hope that whenever we put a patient on a study, that this new agent will offer some real-life benefit to them. But one really doesn't know whether this is really better for the patient than the treatment that's already being given.
If it works, the doctors learn something. If it doesn't work, they still learn something. And the patients coming next after you benefit.
There is always some risk involved with clinical trials, but safety is of paramount importance.
Both internationally and in the United States, a set of procedures have been put in place for institutions, researchers, to oversee the conduct of clinical trials.
Procedures are often reviewed by bodies like the National Cancer Institute, which may evaluate a drug to see if it's safe enough even to be in an investigational trial.
The Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, approves many clinical trials. The National Institutes of Health also has oversight on clinical trials.
The Institutional Review Board is a very important oversight body that ensures appropriate conduct of research to ensure that it's conducted ethically, morally, and to make sure that it's conducted in a way that maximizes the scientific value of the study. Institutional Review Board members include physicians, scientists, nurses, biostatisticians, lay individuals, patients, patient advocacy, and together as a group, they ensure that when a researcher or investigator makes application to an IRB to perform a study, that the study is conducted appropriately, taking into consideration all of these issues.
For every clinical trial, there's a set of eligibility criteria. If, for instance, you have a medical condition that would put you at higher risk of a complication or a potential serious side effect from a medication that's being used, you won't be able to enter into that trial.
For example, if your liver's not working quite right or your kidneys aren't working quite right, and you're given a new drug that requires your liver to change it in the body to metabolize it and your kidneys to get rid of it, then you wouldn't be eligible to be in such a clinical investigation.
We tell people very clearly that we don't want to hurt them while trying to help them, and that we hope that perhaps there'll be another way to help build them up a little bit and they might be able to try again. It's very disappointing, sometimes devastating, to hear that you cannot participate in something you have great hopes about because you're too sick, but it would not be responsible to do otherwise.
During any clinical trial, you're going to be monitored very, very rigorously along the way to make sure that there aren't any side effects that are occurring that would be potentially harmful to you.
Any phase of clinical trials, 1, 2, or 3, you're not preventing side effects, you're trying to identify side effects.
What exactly was it going to do to my body? Not only take care of my problem of multiple myeloma, but was it going to sacrifice my organs? When they relieved my fears with that and how they would keep a good eye on me and how they take blood tests to check on things and urine every 2 weeks, that was beautiful. So that kind of relieved a lot of fears that I had.
The risk primarily was toxicity to the heart, and the way my oncology team addressed that was to say, you're going to be monitored, rigorously and periodically. But over time, it was clear I was suffering heart toxicity, and we knew why I had to withdraw.
In most cases, the actual study aspects of taking part in a clinical trial are paid for, but you should be very clear about what other costs might be entailed.
When there's hypervigilance, rightfully so during a clinical trial, more blood tests perhaps, more CAT scans, maybe surgeries, that you consider the time and the effort. And I think there's some personal costs around that, not only to you as the patient, but your family members that need to be considered.
It's going to be important to think about what the balance is there for you in terms of cost. Time away from family, the increased burden of travel, tests, potential side effects, impacts on quality of life, time away from work when you're sicker. Is that something you really want to do? It's very, very important to remember and to realize that it's okay to say no to a clinical trial. Your doctors and your care team will ensure that whether or not you decide to enter into a clinical trial, you will still receive the state-of-the-art treatment for your disease.
Ella me explicó, ella me dio todos los informes.
Eso me parece que era un estudio nuevo, que no se tiene mucho conocimiento, no se sabía si iba a funcionar o no iba a funcionar, entonces ella decidió no.
My sense of what that meant after I said no was simply that I was totally embraced as a patient with quality care. It was simply a level of respect for a choice that was mine to make.
If at any point during a clinical trial you determined that the side effects or the increased burden from testing, for instance, is not tolerable to you, you can withdraw from the trial, and that can happen at any point during the trial. And it's okay to do that. You will still receive the standard or state-of-the-art treatment.
Patients do ask me if they're feeling really ill, do I have to continue? And the answer is no, you don't have to continue. You have the right to go to your healthcare team, to go to your doctor or your nurse and say, you know, this is not what I expected it to be. You have that right to ask that question and then to revisit your options that you have. If you don't continue on this therapy, what else can you do?
There's no reason to feel bad about the decision to withdraw or curtail participation in a clinical trial, because ultimately, again, you have to be comfortable with how you're being taken care of.
Very often our patients will bring someone with them when a decision about treatment has to be made. And that person, if at the best, is someone who has perhaps been with this patient through other decisions and knows how they think about things and what their values are. Someone else to hear the discussion and be able to talk about the issues with the patient later outside of the hospital. That can be very helpful.
I'm a nurse and a professor of nursing. The reality was I was so anxious. I had to have somebody with me all the time to really help me remember what somebody said, or would help me read something or talk to somebody to translate out the information. Just keep pushing to get people to answer your questions and help people understand that when they say something and you don't understand it, to say to them, I don't understand what in the world you're talking about.
So as a person newly diagnosed with cancer, it's very important that at the time of your appointments with the doctors where you're going to talk about treatment, that you try to set things up so that you get the information and the support that you need. If at all possible, don't come alone. Come with a friend or a family member or somebody who can trust to help you understand and remember what is said.
You need to drink more fluids.
Quizás necesite tomar más líquidos porque se deshidrata.
Posiblemente.
Use a professional interpreter, somebody who understands not only the language, but the medical terminology.
Don't stay in the dark and just take everything they want to give you, because you have the right to say yes or no. You don't have to feel that because you say no, there isn't something else for you. You see, and that's the most important thing. Your life is important. It's important to you. make it important to them.
We strongly encourage patients, if it's helpful to them, to seek second opinions. We often can work in a very integrated way with the physicians who are offering second opinions, and I think it helps the overall sense of the patient's comfort with their therapy.
The patient really has to know what are the alternatives. If I do this investigational treatment, what am I giving up? And what's the likelihood of one working and not the other?
If by going on a clinical trial, it would negate being able to go back to something that's tried and true, I might have to think about it a little bit. As long as that was not the case, I would have no qualms at all about trying something new.
Having the opportunity to offer patients participation in clinical trials is a great resource. We may have a fork in the road and may need to choose between two things which are not exactly comparable. Maybe today it's not the right thing for you, but tomorrow it may be. Maybe it's not the right thing for you, but it's the right thing for the person sitting next to you in the waiting room. After all, the doctor is the expert in the disease and the treatment, but the patient is the expert in his or her own life. Nobody knows better what fits for them, what their attitude is towards illness, towards risk-taking, towards possible new treatments, the challenges that are inherent in taking a chance. So it's very important that both talk freely and honestly so that the decision is made feels right for that individual person.
We hope we have provided information that will help patients make the very personal decision of whether or not to enroll in a clinical trial. The enclosed brochure provides supplemental information and suggestions for further discussion. This video is not intended to be a substitute for discussions between patients and their physicians. All patients considering enrollment in a clinical trial are advised to get their questions answered by their physician and the clinical trial study team before making their decision.
Okay, welcome back. So for this video, I provide two questions to you in WeChat group. Check the questions.
Laushi, can you just send the questions here itself in chat, because Laushi, it's very difficult to open WeChat nowadays. Laushi. Laushi, can you just send the questions that you are sending? You can send it on here in the chat, in the Zoom chat, because it's very difficult for us to open it.
Okay. Two questions. Control C. Here. Okay. So I get the answer from you in WeChat. In fact, you can answer just directly in the Zoom. Yeah, Zoom talking, Zoom chatting windows. Yeah, you can see your answer in the Zoom chatting windows here. Yeah.
Okay, Laushi.
Okay, I get some answer from you for the first question about phases. Yeah, how many phases from for the clinical trial? Yeah, and also how to protect the patients from the harm, yeah, from risk.
So Lakshya, we have to write it down or send it to you, or just we have to answer it?
That's okay. You can just answer in WeChat, in chatting windows in Zoom.
Okay.
That's okay, but not necessary now. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So then back to my slides, and I will explain some information again. Okay. Let me check that. Okay, clinical trial. Take the clinical trial for new drug as an example, and also based on the information you get from the video. I think you can understand clinical trial completely, I think, yeah. Okay, so clinical trial, from a class of all scientific approaches to evaluate medical disease prevention, diagnostic technique, and treatment. So that means for clinical trial, it's a very general definition, not just for new drugs. Yeah, maybe for some techniques, maybe for treatment, or maybe for some prevention, prevention service. Okay, so we call the clinical trial. So that means we use human being as the subjects, yeah, or testee. Yeah, we take the human being as a testee. So that's why we call clinical trial, and we don't use experimental like that. Okay, so here I list some example for the factors studied on in clinical trial. So new drugs will be very typical objective or factors. And also some just like medical or healthcare technology, maybe some new ways of prevention, maybe some policy, a new policy, okay, maybe some programs for screening and diagnosis, and just like this. Okay, so because all of these trials will carry out in human beings. Okay, so about the first question I posed, how many clinical trial? In the videos introduced the 3 phases, but in fact, generally speaking, we have 4 phases. Phase 1, 2, 3, 4, and China takes the same arrangement of phases to USA. That means we have 4 phases, and just like similar to the phases in USA. And you know, recently, and the USA and China, yeah, the relationship not so good. Yeah, okay, I think you know that. Yeah, but in previous years, we had some just like policy, just like some technique, yeah, really borrow strengths from USA. Yeah, okay. I think maybe that's the reason why USA hate China. Yeah, okay. So, but anyway, so that's about the phases. And for different phases, here I list the main objective for the different phases clinicals. Just like phase 1, we try to find the maximum dosage. So that means we focus on the safety of a new medicine. So we try to find the maximum dosage a human being can take. And generally speaking, for phase 1, maybe use patients and maybe use healthy volunteer. And I think in past, I remember maybe 20 years ago, 20 years before, my classmates, gentlemen, participated in the phase 1 clinical trial as the healthy volunteers. And in phase 1 clinical trial, they will set different dosage groups from low to high, and then for different groups, maybe just several volunteers. I remember maybe just 3, maybe just 4, typically just 3. That means for different dosage group, just cover 3 volunteers, and then they take the drug, and they will be monitored by, I think, every maybe half an hour, and to extract the blood and for some medical examination. Okay, so phase 2 try to find the effectiveness. So try to find if the new drug is effective to the diagnostic patients. So that's definitely for patients and not for healthy volunteer. Okay. So and phase 3 is the most strict required or most formal clinical trial. That means phase 3 clinical trial have to follow the 3 principle, like a randomized controlled trial. Okay, so remember, phase 3 will be the most formal clinical trial. Because after phase 3 clinical trial, the new drug will be used in clinics. So that means marketing. Yeah. So that means phase 3 clinical trial will determine the marketing of the new drug. So that's why that's very important. Phase 3 clinical trial, and the phase 4 is the post-marketing clinical trial. That means because in phase 3 trial, clinical trial, the number of the patients still be limited. So if you try to find some rare event or some rare side effect, so you have to increase the number of patients. So that is objective of phase 4. So phase 4 clinical trial try to find additional information, additional details about the drug's efficacy and more complete safety profile. Because for some rare event, last class we talked about proportion rate for the binary variables. And if the denominator, if the sample size is not large enough, so it's impossible to find the rare event or the rare side effect outcome. Okay, so that's phase 4. And for the drug company in China, phase 4 not necessary. So that means, but for the company, if you can carry out a phase 4, it's good to improve the drug. Yeah. Okay. So you can find the rare event, then you can change the design, you change the component of your drug. So not necessary, but it's better. It's good. So that means patients and the company, drug company, will benefit from the phase 4 clinical trial. Okay, that's the 4 phases for standard clinical trial. Okay, here I use standard because clinical trial will be required by governmental policy, and the governmental policy or governmental regulation. I mean, just like in China, we have so many, really so many formal regulation. And these regulations are really law-like. So just like law, yeah, law-like, because the company, the drug company and the hospitals and the researchers from hospital have to follow the regulation for clinical trial, because based on the regular based on the formal regulation, the clinical trial can be carried out legally. Yeah, this word. So because clinical trial, in clinical trial, and the patients may be exposed to some risk. Yeah, so that's why, as a government, we have to determine some regulation to protect the benefit of patients. Okay, so that's why we call clinical trial is a standard or formal. Yeah, so that's why in almost I believe in all of the countries, I think include your countries, there should be the formal regulation about clinical trial. Okay, no matter drug and or maybe on the healthcare program have to follow the formal regulation. That's very important. Okay, so about the details, yeah, I don't give here I just give some introduce like that. Okay, I just show you this flow chart, and from this flow chart you can find before the marketing of a new drug, there is a long journey. Yeah, and there is a tough journey. Why? Because during this situation, during this procedure, you can find different researchers are necessary. Just like you can find here, before clinical, here we introduced the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trial. But in fact, before clinical trial, we have other studies, just like basic research, just like prototype design or discovery, just like preclinical development, and then clinical development. And after clinical development, just like after phase 3, after drug marketing, we still need some more research. Yeah. Okay. So that is from this flow chart you can find it's difficult to develop a new drug. Yeah. So high cost. Yeah, high cost for a new drug. Okay. So then here I give a larger clinical trial. A larger, I think, yeah. No, here I give a observational study, cohort example, data set. This is a large cohort, physician health study in USA. And in this study, they try to let me check. Try to compare some drug like this aspirin, yeah, aspirin and beta carotene, and try to compare the risk and the benefits, and yeah, use the 2x2 factorial design like that. So you can go to the website and get to check the information for this clinical trial. Okay. Okay. Then here I give some basic steps for a clinical trial. So you can find the first step will be protocol. You have to, protocol is a formal documentary. You have to prepare before a clinical trial. It's a required documentary. So that means when you before you get the FDA approval, in China we have CFDA. Before you get the approval from CFDA for a new drug, you have to go through all of the steps. So the first step will be discuss and prepare the protocol. Okay? And then you have to enroll the patients. Yeah. Okay. And then assign the treatment to patients, and then collect the information based on the case report form. Then analysis the information from the patients. So prepare the report. So all of the just like protocol and the report for medical report, research report, and all of the documents prepared, and then you have to submit all of the documentary to CFDA, Food and Drug Administration. Okay, and then the staff from CFDA will check all of the documentary and to assure if you get the fair result about the new drug. Then they will sign a formal approval to you. You means the drug company. Okay. Okay. So yeah, for phase 3, because phase 3 I have explained is the most formal clinical trial, have to follow randomization, controlled, and yeah, any other principles for study. Okay, so here I give some example, some information about the cancer clinical trial. In fact, just like the video, yeah, just like play the video. So I will not give the details, just like why patients have to attend the cancer clinical trial. In fact, not have to, yeah. And that's your opinion. That's the patient's opinion to participate or not. You can say yes or no. So from the video, you can find clinical trial. Definitely, clinical trial from clinical trial. Current patient and the future patient, maybe both can benefit from that. But the current patient in the clinical trial may expose to some risk. Yeah, that's why they have a right to say yes or no. Yeah. Okay. So I think you need okay. Break time. Come back to 50, yeah?
Okay, also.
To 50.